Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are joining us from in the world. A very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining this Axio Systems webinar entitled How AI Ops Can Remove Complexity and Operational Excellence, presented by George Spalding of Pink Elephant and Ed Perez of Axio Systems. My name is Kirsty, and I'm the North America Marketing Specialist here at Axio Systems. We are a leader in providing enterprise class ITSM and ITOM software. For more information on Axio Systems, including features, case studies, videos, or to request a demo of our platform, simply head to our website at axiosystems.com. Now in this webinar, George and Ed will share how you can roll out a targeted AI Ops initiative that harnesses machine learning, automation, and predictive analysis to solve your most pressing IT operation challenges. At the end of this webinar, George and Ed will be here to answer any questions you might have on the topic. To ask a question, simply use the built-in Q&A function in the webinar application. And now, without further ado, let's get started. So George, Ed, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Kirsty. How are you today, George?
I am good. It's a little chilly in Minnesota right now, but other than that, I'm good, Ed.
That sounds great. So, George, before we get started, let's talk a little about the agenda of what we're going to cover today. All right. So, as you can see on the agenda slide, we're going to cover, what is AI ops. There's a lot of misconceptions. It's a fairly new term that's only been around for the last few years. And then we're going to talk about more about what are we trying to achieve with this new term, with this new technology of AI ops. We're going to talk about some of the areas to really address when you're considering AI ops, such as data acquisition, correlation, prioritization, root cause analysis, anomaly detection, aggregation, remediation, and then at the very end, some top takeaways that you can address. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is AI ops, right? So back in 2017, it was a term that was coined by Gartner. And put in simple terms, AI ops is the applications of machine learning and data science to IT operations problems, right? So, let's take a look at all the events and all the alerts that are coming from our operations platform and kind of apply some artificial intelligence and some machine learning to that information. So with AI ops, sorry, George.
Let me interrupt here because I have to confess, Ed, I have been doing IT and mostly IT ops for like 30 years, which is scary. And when I first heard this, it's a very sexy term, just listening to the term. And then when I read some of the marketing information from from Gartner and also from other platforms, I still didn't really get it.
Okay.
I still didn't really get, what it was and what it did. And I'm really hoping that when we have somebody as bright as you and as experienced as you, you're gonna tell me exactly what it is.
Yeah, so to put it in simple terms, right, George?
That's good for me.
It's really about, okay, I have all these infrastructure monitoring tools, right? So, and all these infrastructure monitoring tools, things like, maybe Splunk, BMC, Hewlett Packard, or, New Relic, App Dynamics. We have all these tools out there in the market that are doing like discovery and monitoring of my infrastructure, right? And they're generating alerts, right? So let's say CPU utilization reaches a certain threshold, memory reaches a certain threshold, right? Let's say applications go down. We're getting all this information, and a lot of times we're getting flooded with all this information. So let's say, the server is reaching, we have some thresholds defined for CPU utilization. And now it keeps occurring and it keeps occurring and it keeps occurring. And now we're getting a flood of events, right? So what we need to do is we need to, let's say, consolidate all that information. We have to, let's say, apply some alert correlation, some deduplication to streamline that information.
So
And then,
I'm sorry to interrupt again. I'm sorry. So these various tools, whatever those might be, and you gave a few, and I'm sure there's a gazillion more. They're doing what they're supposed to do, right? In other words, they're operating correctly. They're operating according to what they're supposed to do. We set some kind of thresholds, and then they're responding, right?
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Only we're human beings, and we don't know what to do with all that stuff.
Correct. 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 So what we need to do is we need to like denoise it, right? Let's reduce that noise of all these events. And once we start reducing that noise of those events, let's capture that information, right? And then after a period of time, I can actually see a trend, right? And then as I see the trend, for example, maybe every November 15th between the hours of 10 and 1, I see a spike, right? So maybe I need to address that spike in an intelligent manner, right? Apply some artificial intelligence so I can now start doing some predictive analysis of this data as I start moving forward. So that way I can say, well, hey, I see this trend of these spikes occurring from past historical information. Now I can do some capacity planning for the future to circumvent these events, right? And
So for
provide
people
some
who are
intelligence.
simple like me, we're applying big data, predictive analytics to ops information. In other words,
Exactly.
we've been getting all this ops information from tools for a long time. We bought them to give us that information. We're monitoring tools out there, and we keep buying more monitoring tools, or else the various things come with monitoring elements. Now we're taking all that data that we're getting from them, and we're applying big data, predictive analytics to sort this out and start to make sense of it, so that, looking at your little menu or breadcrumbs across the bottom, so that I can act. In other words, my guess is the big data would be the analyze phase of the breadcrumb statement down in the bottom.
Correct. Absolutely. You got it, George.
I'm getting it. All right. I feel better.
All right.
All right.
Cool.
Keep going, man. I'm sorry I had to interrupt there.
No, that's quite all right, George. So, why do we have AI ops, right? So with AI ops, organizations start realizing a better pulse of events that are impacting their services, and they can start becoming proactive with predictive analysis, like we mentioned before. Now, this, of course, will reduce the cost of downtime to the business. With AI ops, you'll also start realizing improvement in performance with all the trending and historical information that we've been gathering and reporting. And when you improve performance, what occurs, George?
Reliability and
Exactly.
happiness.
And happiness. So, George, let me ask you, being with Pink, with all the organizations that you work with and upper management, do you see any of them that have a really good pulse on operations, specifically around event and infrastructure monitoring?
Well, obviously some are better than others, but here's what I'm finding as I begin to understand this a little bit more, is that there's definitely been a trend, and I even wrote an article on it a couple of years ago, 3 years ago maybe, about the fact that CIOs obviously are in a position and obviously want to be strategic. That's their purpose. They want to introduce new strategic initiatives. They want to move towards all the fancy, nice little buzzwords that we talk about, specifically like digital transformation. They want to do that. And sometimes they run smack into the fact that operational excellence, their IT department, their ops are costing them what I guess I would term strategic credibility, because my ops department isn't doing well enough. What seems like the costs are up, and the basic impression, my reputation, if you will, my brand as an IT department, and then my brand as the IT leader, really is in danger. So I can't introduce any sort of strategy. So when you focus something like AI ops that you're talking about here, and the real payoff of AI ops, I think, it sounds like, and even looking at the title of the webinar, sounds like it's going to be operational excellence. I'm going to be able to do ops better. I'm going to be able to save money, and that's going to be mostly people and also response time, those kinds of things. I'm going to respond faster. I should be able to, and I should be able to, I'm hoping, respond to the right stuff, thus increasing things like availability and reliability. So it's like, I think that we're looking at this concept of operational excellence, and that's what you're talking about, and that's great. And I'm looking at it from a little wider, in some cases, higher level view. So it's pretty fascinating to me so far from what little I understand, because you're the expert, I'm not. So keep going, Ed. Can't wait.
Great, George. Well, what are we trying to achieve, right? So what is the outcome from this data? What is the true objective for gathering all this data? And how will it benefit my organization? What are the plus and minuses of gathering this data? Well, discovering and getting the data, when it comes to ops, we can be talking about huge amounts of data, disparate mechanisms or solutions for this data. So I might be using a unique tool for all my Windows servers, and I might be using another tool for critical application monitoring, and yet another for my cloud solutions. So I need to analyze this data. I need to sift through it. I need to find some matching metrics, and then I need to model the data. Now, once I'm able to model the data, I can start providing some reporting, some usable results to my customers and my end users. And this will become an ongoing practice, continual service improvement.
Hey, Ed, this is, that I was the co-author of the Continual Service Improvement volume for ITIL v3. Could you owe me royalties for this slide?
Let me talk to Kirsty afterwards and see what we can do.
Yeah. No, but basically what you're talking about here really is a continual improvement cycle.
Yep,
And you're
exactly.
providing tool for continual improvement. Mine's a little more theoretical. So great. Super.
Perfect. So after we address what we were trying to achieve, where and how can I ingest this data to meet this goal? Well, we all know that Assist has a great ITOM solution, but as we know, clients may have multiple infrastructure event management solutions. Now, like I said before, some might have cloud monitoring, application monitoring, and others. Well, we have to denoise that data. We have to be able to not just deduplicate the data, but we need to normalize that information. And once all this is achieved, we can have a quick and easy mechanism to perform field mapping as we prepare this data for the Cmdb.
Oh, whoa, go
Go
back.
back. Yep.
Whoa. All right. I need to understand a couple things. Okay.
Sure.
So, all right. So here we got this gazillion tools on the left side of the screen. And they're all different vendors, et cetera. And they're all pumping. Maybe they might be monitoring the same basic system, or they might be monitoring the results of combinations of systems, et cetera. So what if I heard you just now right, the potential is that multiples of those tools are sending the same, in essence, the same event or the same a notification about the same thing that's happening, and it's
Correct.
coming to us from different places.
Mhm.
And then it gets dumped into some kind of what I would call suspense bucket or interim bucket, which you've got listed there as the iPaaS server. And that's where you're going to start going through deduping. So you're trying to sort it out and say, no, that's the same thing. No,
Yep.
that's the same thing, right?
Yep.
And then you're going to normalize that data so that it actually is going to make sense to our Cmdb as it comes in. And you're using, this is the part that I found when you said the word Cmdb, because you just said that I found that pretty interesting because you're using the CMDB as the real repository for this data normalization, field value mapping, and all that stuff. You're actually using the CMDB in Assist.
Exactly, yeah. After it's gone through its middle stage of that iPaaS server, where we did all the mapping and normalization and deduplication, we've now streamlined the data even further than what typical solutions like Splunk and AppDynamics do at their layer, even further. And then that way it's a lot cleaner when it eventually enters into the Assist CMDB.
And of course, this is really without any human intervention that all this is going on, right?
Exactly, yep.
So, okay, I get it now. So you're kind of using the CMDB not just for a repository of what I would call historical data or active assets that we care about, but actually live events that are going on right now.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool. Go.
All right. So that kind of brings us to our first poll question. Okay. Now, the first poll question is your CMDB being populated from external data sources? All right. So you should see that poll open up for you.
I got it.
All right. And some of the responses are yes, and it is automated. Yes, it's automated, but struggling with reconciliation and deduplication. Number 3 is no, but I would like to. It's still pretty much a manual process. And number 4 is no interest at all. So let's give you a few minutes to respond to these. Okay. See, we're getting some numbers in there. Some surprising numbers. Can you see these numbers, George?
I don't see any numbers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anything.
So far, like 67% are answering number 3.
No, but I'd like to. It's still a manual process.
Yeah.
This is why the CMDB gets a bad rap. It's because in order to do it, if it's manual, it's incredible amount of work.
Exactly.
Really an incredible amount of work.
Yep. And I'm really glad to see that like a third of the respondents are answering number 1, that yes, it is automated. So that's really good. It's really
And
good.
I'm finding that the what one would call what we call, at least at Pink, a federated CMDB from multiple data sources, the actual discovery and population of the CMDB from multiple data sources. That's great. I find that in order to make it really work, there has to be a great deal of standardization, because otherwise we've got too many different players, too many different cooks, I guess would be another way of looking at it.
Yep. All right. So the voting is closed, and yep, the majority of the respondents did respond with no, but would like to. Still a manual process.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on.
You get to show us how it's not going to be a manual process.
That's right. That's right.
Ouch.
Look at this one, right? Is this an eye chart or what? Right? And it's kind of like a little shock to the senses here, because what we're doing is before we're showing you all the possible alerts that are coming into a system. So before we bring all that data into the CMDB, we don't want all that data, right? We really need to correlate those events first. So it's all about consolidation and deduplication. Take all that noise and correlate the data. So how can we do that? Well, George, in the next few slides, we're going to show some examples on how you can visualize this and combat that noise and start providing, or laying down the foundation to start providing AI to operations.
So before you go to those, what is this? I've heard you use the term in the past. You haven't said it yet. An event storm. Can you tell me what exactly an event storm is?
Yeah, so an event storm is like an example would be maybe memory utilization or even disk saturation, right? So we have some applications running in the environment. Users are accessing that application, and maybe because of disk saturation, that application is coming to a performance slowdown. So a bunch of events are getting generated because of some thresholds that I've defined for that disk saturation. So, and I might be checking that disk every so many seconds. So I'm going to start getting a lot of events because that disk is getting full and no one's actually resolved it yet. So I'm getting that storm of events, and that storm of events can also turn into a storm of incidents and issues that get correlated back, or should I get transferred back to my ITSM service solution.
Thus taking people who say basically, wait a minute, is this the same? Oh, wait, is that the same? That the same? That's the same? But the only way to figure that out at that point is human beings looking at it going, hey, wait, isn't this the same? That kind of thing. Okay, get it. All right,
Yep.
go ahead.
Okay. So let's go on to our next stage, right? So one example of doing alert correlation is what we call transient analysis, right? And this is about tracking the historical information of key metrics that would make up your analysis. So see the patterns of this information. Even start addressing some areas like threshold definitions. So even at this layer, I'm reporting some historical information over time, as like you can see in these screenshots, like virtual memory, free virtual, total memory. So you can start gauging and monitoring these particular metrics. And this is something we do today, right, with a lot of our monitoring tools. Another example is the configuration analysis, right? So this is where we're seeing the structure of the source of the data and how it relates to other components. So see how it can be related or be a component of having your services mapped to a business solution. So here we're visualizing that data after it's been introduced to our Cmdb. So in addition, see any patterns in relation to the events and incidents and changes. Seeing the alerts and where they're reporting from your Cmdb. So as you can see in this view, we have a graphical view of a service, right? SAP, and everything that it's connected to. And over to the right, on the lower right, I can actually see the events, a graphical view of the events coming in for that service. So tying it all into a nice graphical view for configuration analysis.
Yeah, this is huge. This is very impressive. Just seeing it on, understanding it. I'm certain that the lines being green versus red have something to do with where the error is coming from, et cetera. I would assume.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
You're correct,
Cool.
George.
Hey, wow, I got one right. Okay, great.
So, George, the next area for alert correlation is human defined, right? Not everything has to be automation based. Some can actually be manually defined. So, in every organization, we have a deep knowledge within application development, data center operations, service desk, and all these people may have a rich knowledge of articles and applications and the inner workings. So let's take that knowledge and let's apply some alert thresholds and correlations so they can simplify this process as you see here, right? So I can go in there and now start setting some thresholds when events occur, right? So I can say, let's say memory space utilization reaches a critical stage at 75%. What do I want to do when that occurs? Well, I might want to generate an event and maybe notify some stakeholders within the organization.
The dilemma, go back to the human
Yep,
defined just for a quick second, Ed. So the dilemma here is that we're dealing with actual people
yes,
who do things that people do. So in other words, if my thresholds actually produce event storms and I'm the one on the receiving end of the event storm, I could easily see myself going in if I had the correct access rights. I could see myself going in and changing the threshold so that I wouldn't receive the event storm just because I didn't want to be overwhelmed. This is not a good thing because we want to know when stuff is breaking. We want to know when the service is not going to be available or when the value is not going to be transferred. But I can see just myself getting overwhelmed as somebody in ops going, look, I got to change these things. So
Yes, yes,
I think that the important part is that if I'm not on the receiving end of the event storm, I will be more, I guess the word would be altruistic in how I set up the thresholds. I would put the right numbers in there because I'm not the one who would be deluged.
that's right. That's right. And a lot of organizations will probably start at human defined, right?
Sure.
And if you notice, like a lot of alert monitoring solutions have concepts of alarm correlation settings, even at their layer, where they can set tolerance counts, right? So if
Right.
I receive like anything more than 3 events within 5 minutes, generate one alert, right?
Right.
Um, so this would be a starting point, right? So it's just another way of doing alert correlation.
Cool.
The next layer is cross-validation, okay? And with cross-validation, as those alerts are coming in, right, and they're getting sent up to, let's say, my ITSM solution, now I can actually do some cross-checking. So I might say, well, I have these alerts that are coming across. They might be generated by this example where we're talking about an email service, right? That's getting spam, a flood of spam coming in. But what I can do is I can now start doing some cross validation and look within my infrastructure for similar events, right? So maybe I can track to see alert correlation for similar tickets at the same location, okay? Or maybe against the same department or same category. So this is just another example where I can start applying some historical knowledge based on past events.
And it's more than just looking at the same CI. It then goes beyond that, the same CI, then the same system, maybe the same physical location, maybe the same what you were talking about. Because that's pretty impressive actually. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So alert correlation. So where do we group these alerts? All right. So there's a concept or a project that was put forward by Microsoft called AIOps Powered Incident Management System. And what this is service violation can be alerted before its actual occurrence by predicting the service's future status based on historical behaviors, workload patterns, and the underlying infrastructure activities. So we take a series of data-driven techniques that have been developed by Microsoft, and it targets different phases of incident management. Specifically, incident detection, which improves the quality of incident reporting, while incident correlation and summary together promote incident triage and mitigation. So to pursue a high accuracy of prediction, because that's what it's all about, that predictive analysis, we need to gather a variety of signals such as system health, infrastructure monitoring data, customer input, and this can potentially contribute to incident detection, predictive incident detection. So, however, just having resource health signals is not always enough. So what is missing is the resource relationships that help understand topologies, models, and dependencies among the entire cloud system and the CMDB. So then when we correlate these alerts and events, we cluster the events by leveraging the resources tagged in each incident and then adapt previous log parsing approaches to identify incident topics in a fine-grained manner.
So
Okay.
are you, I mean, boiling that all down, you're really smart, Ed. Boiling that down, you can tell me with a certain, I'm assuming, percentage of accuracy, um, what might happen in the future, and then we could take steps to actually make that future not come true.
Correct. Absolutely.
That's really almost mind blowing there. Okay. Well, I mean, in so many words. Okay, let me back up one more.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so is this in essence the big data concept, like, Amazon uses every time I buy anything that says, oh, I'm glad you want to buy that. Others who have bought this also bought this, or you might like this, right? Are we
Yeah.
basically taking, in so many words, those kind of big data predictive analytic algorithms and applying them to incidents?
Absolutely. Applying it, yep, to incidents and the events coming in.
Cool. All right,
Yep.
do the poll.
All right. Time for another poll, everybody. So let's open up those polls. All right. So this poll question: have you integrated your ITSM and your ITOM solutions together? First answer is yes. Second one is yes, but it is not providing the value we expected. Number 3 is no, but would like to. And finally, there's no interest at all at this time. So we got our answers coming in. All right. We're getting some good results. Yeah, so far, George, 80% are saying no. They don't have their ITSM and their ITOM solutions integrated together. What, George? Let's pause for a second here. What are you seeing out there when you're speaking to CIOs and CEOs about this, about integrating the two, and what are the benefits?
I also, well, first of all, I find that in many cases, people are very familiar with ITSM, and it's been around forever, and they're at the point now where they're almost questioning the value of ITSM sometimes, but they have, over the years, the ITOM solutions have all been very piecemeal. I bought this one, then I bought this one, then I bought that one, then I bought that one, then I bought that one, and there really wasn't a drive or a movement to try and centralize those and consolidate them and standardize the ITOM solutions. I believe what I see out there is it's only recently, and recently being, maybe the last 5 years or so, where everyone went, look, we have to really start getting our operations act together. And part of that came with the whole agile DevOps thing, where we basically said, look, ops has been running on the old instructions since almost right after Y2K. I mean, we went through Y2K. That was basically, for all intents and purposes, that was dev and ops. But as soon as we got through it, ops kind of just breathed a sigh of relief and went back to their old way of doing things. And they also then, right in those same years, they got messages from way up at the top saying, look, kids, we don't want to be on CNN. I don't want a data breach. I don't want a fraud. I don't want any of that. So just lock this baby down and go away, lock yourself in a closet, and we'll get back to you. And they pretty much never got back to them. So for all intents and purposes, I don't see that people almost see ITSM and ITOM in the same breath as the same discussion, let alone being part of the same tool. I don't see that. They don't see it.
Yeah, it's something that I do see also out there. And there is so much value in tying the two together. But that would be a discussion for another day.
Mm-hmm. It would.
So we're coming to our first case study, right? And we're going to talk about a couple of case studies here. And the first one is that we with ITOM and the collection and the analysis of historical data, with Assist, we had a customer. It's a government site that actually saved thousands of hours. They wanted to centralize control and provide intelligent process automation. And with Assist, they were able to achieve that. So with Assist, they were able to automate routine tasks and create capacity for their IT teams. And this resulted in reduced site visits through automation with Assist, ITSM, and ITOM. So a combination of the two brought this to the forefront for this client.
And you're not even mentioning the fact that we're in a pandemic and reducing site visits.
Yes, exactly,
I mean, there aren't
exactly.
any site visits anymore.
That's
So
right.
it's huge. Yeah, that's great.
Now, the next one is another client was faced with an increase of monitoring needs from a growing number of virtualized servers. And this kind of went back to some of our previous slides where, you have all these monitoring needs and, they could be coming from disparate sources. Now, with Assist, this client was able to enrich the data collection that they're getting from all these sources and provide management information quickly and also delivering quality service across the organization's business areas. Okay.
Very cool.
So, to some of the top takeaways from today's session, right? Number one, realize that AI ops is a wide topic. As you can see, it has many key features that can present future potentials to any organization, every organization. Number two, don't feel you need a wide array of solutions. You don't. Operational excellence can be addressed with a single data platform. You may have multiple sources coming in, right, into your environment that's monitoring and checking for events, but let's streamline that information. Let's still use those solutions, but let's streamline it to a single data platform. And then thirdly, Axios Systems has the capability to help our customers improve availability of their services. So those are our three top takeaways. So George, anything you want to add to this?
Absolutely. Totally. So I look at it from a different standpoint. I look at it the fact that, so obviously this solution that you're talking about, the basic, the single sentence, the elevator speech is that this will produce operational excellence, that our ops will get better, things will get faster, things will get cheaper, things will get more stable, more secure, more available, all those good news. That's great. But that in itself, which is, a good thing. I mean, it's a great thing. We can all aspire to that. And it makes sense to us. If we're in ops, it makes sense to us. But that it really does have an even bigger payoff when I look at it from the strategic side. I look at the fact that, first of all, my CIOs can suddenly have an excellent operations group and therefore introduce new and more strategic and more creative initiatives like digital transformation, which is, of course, the big buzzword that everyone's going for. And I also find that the percentage of IT spend, which has been growing over the last 20 years, up from, say, 25 to 30% to keep the lights on, now at the point of 70 to 75% to keep the lights on, I think that could actually start to reverse because suddenly I actually can save money and do good ops. So I could save money and do good ops. Whoa. So therefore I could start to reverse that trend. In other words, that now leads us down into the DevOps world and the DevOps path, which is exactly, but when anyone who's tried to do DevOps realizes, and Gartner was very clear on this a couple of years ago, it's a cultural shift. It's a cultural transformation. Well, they take a while. This doesn't involve a cultural transformation. I can basically use AI ops and improve my operational excellence, which in itself will therefore promote that cultural shift. So I'm really impressed with AI ops. I am impressed. This is as someone who, obviously didn't really know a lot coming in. I mean, I've been doing ops and stuff for, decades, but this is new stuff and very impressive, Ed. Thanks.
All right. So I think we're coming to our Q&A section. All right. So Kirsty, are you managing the questions coming in?
Yes, I am, Ed. So it looks like we do have time for a couple questions. We only received a couple, so Q&A is still open. If anybody wants to send in their question, I'll be happy to put it over to the panel. But let's go ahead and get to the first question, Ed and George. In one of your slides, you mentioned bringing in multiple data sources. Where can I get a list of the data sources you integrate with?
Sure, yeah. So there's several places you can get that information as far as like, bringing in data sources, utilizing our solution Assist. And I think we'll be able to provide that, but on our website, there's an actual marketplace section. And we'll post that marketplace URL to you. But if you just do a Google search on Axios Marketplace, that'll bring you directly to where you can see all the data sources that we integrate to. Now, there might be some additional ones that might not be listed. So if you have, let's say, a solution that you're collecting data on and it's not listed, please contact us, because it may not have made the list, but it is available.
Great. Thank you, Ed. Okay, another question that came in was, what programming skill sets do I need on staff to perform these integrations into the Cmdb?
That's a great question. I
That's
love
a
that
great
question.
I don't have an
There are
answer, but it's a great
no,
question.
right, George? There are no programming skills required. With Assist, we're actually a codeless, right? A codeless application. So we we provide the linkage of the data sources, right? It's actually and it's all via the user interface. It's just a data mapping utility, right? So give us your source and we'll map that to our destination. So no programming skills required.
Well, that is good to know. Okay. I think we'll wrap it up with this last question, and then we'll just can you work with other cloud services besides Azure?
Yes, we can. Yes. So if you're working currently today with AWS, or maybe you even have a private cloud, we're starting to see more and more private hybrid clouds out there. So depending on the cloud that you're currently utilizing, please contact us so we can definitely support anything outside of Azure. Now, our solution runs on Azure, but that doesn't mean that we can't work with other cloud systems.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap that up. I wanted to do a special thank to everyone for joining us today. Thank you, George and Ed. That was very informative, and thank you for teaching us about learning AI ops. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar as well. And thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Take care, George.
Okay, bye.
Bye.